Our next speaker is someone that I know very dear, and I had the opportunity to work with for a bit. So um, with that, I would like to sort of take the opportunity to introduce Angelica Hill, who will be who will be playing her recorded talk from GopherCon, which I thought was an amazing talk. Actually, sort of the motivation for this whole session here. So anyone, even a British liberal arts major who once aspired to be an actress and then journalist can become a gopher. This talk from Angelica outlines her motivation and struggles to master the coding and achieve Go competency during her first year working at the New York Times with the help of a few Go gurus. Thank you, Angelica.
My name is Angelica Hill, and today I'm going to convince you that anyone can be a gopher. But first, a little about me. I'm currently an associate product manager at the New York Times. I work on the Mercury messaging team, which is the team that oversees the backend infrastructure for all of our emails, newsletters, and push notifications. I spend most of my time working on our backend platform, Helix, which is made up of various predominantly written in Go. I've been at the New York Times for about 2 years, and I've been a gopher for about 1 year. Before that, I was at Columbia Journalism School, studying to get my master in journalism, specializing in counterterrorism, cybersecurity, and policing. Before that, I did my major in English literature and drama, specializing in Shakespeare at Queen Mary's University in London. And before that, I was at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts studying acting. Not your average gopher. Yet here I am. My hope is that by the end of this talk, you will have come to the same conclusion I have. Anyone, even a British liberal arts major who once aspired to be an actress, then an academic, then a journalist, and is now in product, can be a gopher. This talk outlines my motivations and struggles to learn code and achieve Go competency in my first year working at the New York Times, with the help of several wonderful Go gurus. I'll go through the whistle-stop tour, from the moment it all began, into the Google storm, fiddling with functions, sussing out slices, muddling through maps. Then I'll talk you through my first 2 mini projects, Ping Pong and Peanut Butter, before telling you about my first real app and why I chose Shakespeare as the inspiration. Then I'll ask the question, was it worth it? Is it still worth all my time and energy to try to gopherize? Before concluding with a few takeaways and top tips for all you Go veterans, possible Go gurus in the room, and fellow newbies. So, the moment it all began. As I mentioned, I'm in product management, and my team was working on refactoring our backend from PHP to Go, and wanting to understand the various debates that my engineering team were having, as well as wanting to build up some credibility with the various tech teams that I talked to within. Never had dedicated a real big amount of time to it. I never had made the concerted decision to dive in. So I signed myself up for a 3-month, twice after work class at the product school. This class was daunting to me for a number of reasons. Firstly, because only a few months before I started, I had gone to the Apple store and been told by an Apple genius that the answer was to turn my laptop off, leave it for 10 minutes, and then turn it on again. To my embarrassment, it then worked. But on a more serious note, it was daunting because I hadn't started learning from zero for a very long time. Following high school, it had been about deepening my knowledge, becoming an expert in my field. This was the first time I was going to be starting from practically nothing. So the course went through the basic relationship between client and server, as well as introducing us to a range of different languages, Ruby, JavaScript, HTML. In the first week, I went in nervous, thinking it was going to make me a better product manager. But from the moment I wrote that first H1 tag, I was hooked. Coding ignited this fire in me, this excitement. I didn't just want to understand software engineering. I wanted to be able to do it. This led to what can only be described as a Google frenzy. I Googled every single word I'd ever heard come out of an engineer's mouth. Ruby on Rails, spaghetti code, GCP bucket, interface, as well as Googling every single language I'd ever heard mentioned, Rust, SQL, Ruby, Java, and tried to learn them all. A long story short, it got to the point where I was writing a JavaScript file in my text editor, but I wrote Ruby syntax and tried to apply CSS styling, and there was, I think, some SQL commands in there too. It was a mess. Long story short, I was making no progress. How was I going to learn how to be a software engineer when there was just so much to learn? It turns out being overexcited can sometimes do more harm than good. But there was one great thing that did come out of this Google frenzy, this overexcitedness. I started reaching out to the internal communities of practice at the New York Times and the language-specific Slack channels, asking for help and getting coffees with many extremely talented, interesting people who were willing to help. Out of these conversations, I created a Slack group, wanting to have other newbies get the opportunity to talk to these brilliant people who were helping me so much. This is Learning to Code at NYT, a channel I described as a place for beginners to coding, a channel to get advice, resources, and support as you dive into the wonderful world of development. This channel blew up in a way I could never have anticipated. By the end of the first day, we had about 100 members. The next day, one of the directors of engineering emailed me, the CTO, and my manager about it. By the end of 2019, we had over 250 members, and now we're knocking on the door of 300. We've got some great comments. This is one of my favorite. Learning to code feeds me in a way the Snack channel never can. You guys are the best. I was so proud of this group and the community I was beginning to form within the New York Times for fellow newbies, but personally, I was still flailing. I still had no idea how I was going to progress in trying to learn how to be a software engineer. This was where my first Go guru came into the picture, Marwan, who was a colleague at the New York Times. He seemed to literally eat, sleep, and breathe Go. He had such a passion for the language. I thought there must be something here. He directed me to the Golang website, started going through the basics with me, and for the first time in my frantic frenzy, something clicked. I could understand this. This felt like a language I could actually learn. So it was settled. Go was going to be my language, partly because of the unbelievably cute Gophers I saw everywhere. So I had my language, but now I actually had to learn it. Looking for help, I turned to the various external meetups, and it was at a Women Who Go New York City meetup that my first Go guru, Marwan, gave the baton to Jonas, my next Go guru. She taught me a new way of thinking about programming that was syntax and code second, problem first. Think of something you want to do, a problem you want to solve. Think about how you would solve it, and then think about how you can use the tools Go has provided to you to solve that problem. She also taught me about functions and how a function is just a thing you can do. You can call it whenever you need to do that thing. It's safe to say after talking to Jonas, I was fiddling with functions for about a week. This is my first function, a narcissistic one, a virtual friend to say hello to me. Now it was on to slices and maps. Not to be confused with dictionaries, the irony being my first exploration into maps was writing a map of words to definitions, a dictionary map, as it were. With this next fundamental came another Go guru. Jonas introduced me to Wilkin Riviera, who was running the Go New York City meetups at the time. He introduced me to Gopher sizes. Now, The first exercise in Gopher sizes is to write an online quiz. I'm ashamed to say this is the only exercise I have done to this day. However, it did result in about a month-long obsession with quizzes. I wrote quiz 1, quiz 2, quiz 3, longer quiz, funny quiz, Shakespeare quiz, maths quiz. I could go on. So, having potted around with a lot of online resources, blog posts, YouTube tutorials, I felt like I kind of plateaued in my learning. My Go gurus had all been wonderful to this point. However, I was feeling bad about the many Slack messages, coffees, email messages I was sending them. I felt like I needed a more focused way of learning. Luckily, there was a Women Who Go and Go Bridges fundamental workshop coming up. So I signed myself up, borrowed a Go t-shirt, wanting to fit in with the crowd, and went. This is where I met my next Go guru, Johnny, who was running the workshop and who actually happens to be the reason I'm here today, having encouraged me to do this talk. So you can blame him later. This day felt like a turning point for me. Firstly, because it made me realize I'd actually learned some things. Many of the basic concepts Johnny was going through, I understood. But more importantly, I was sitting with fellow newbies, many of whom had been coding for years and were struggling as much as I was. This made me feel far less self-deprecating, in that I had truly worried that maybe I just wasn't smart enough to learn code because I was progressing so slowly. But it also showed me how much I could learn and accomplish when I immersed myself for a day in nothing but Go. Following the workshop, I stayed in contact with my Go guru, and he advised that I start working on mini projects that would enable me to try and use a combination of fundamentals together. Out of this came 2 mini projects that I am unbelievably proud of to this day. This is the first, Ping Pong, a program that I described as a program that allows you to play virtual ping pong and tells you how many times you hit the ball. In reality, it was 2 channels that were passing the string ping and pong between each other. And this is Peanut Butter, named after my favorite midnight snack, a program I described as a program that makes you a virtual peanut butter and jelly sandwich and tells you how long it took. Well, in reality, I originally described it as making a peanut butter and jam sandwich, but as this usually resulted in a long conversation with the difference between jelly and jam in the US and the UK, I thought I'd make my life far easier and just Americanize this once. I was so proud of this particular program that it can be found to this day on my GitHub with a README and everything. So after a series of these mini projects, I was told by my Go guru, Johnny, to think bigger. Think of an app you could actually use in the world. Think of a problem that you see and solve it with this application. Naturally, when thinking about what to do, I turned to my first love, Shakespeare. I decided to write a program that would enable the user to choose a title from the complete works of Shakespeare and then choose a word, and my program would tell that user how many times that word showed up in each act of their selected work. Now, it was one thing knowing how to use some of these fundamentals in mini projects, but it was quite another to use them all at once. After about a week, obsessively coding in the mornings, the evenings, before and after work, as well as a few lunch breaks, I finished my program. However, 1, it only worked in the terminal, and 2, it was over 800 lines of code long, and frankly, a bit of a mess, hence why you will not be seeing screenshots of it now or ever. This is where my next Go guru came in, Bailey, who I met at a Women Who Go meetup. She advised that I look through my code and look for places that I had repeated myself and then write functions to replace those repetitions. She also advised that I look into Go routines and channels. Now, these substantially improved my code. However, I ended up going a little bit crazy with the Go routines and channels. Once I'd finished, I had a total of 189 channels. To give you an idea of what a mess this was, this is what my program looked like after I removed all of the sonnets, all 154 of them. Apparently, it takes about 10,000 hours to become an expert in something. I would say I'm pretty close when it comes to Go routines and channels, definitely when it comes to copy paste. As you can imagine, this caused me a lot of issues. Turning to my first Go guru, Marwan, I got a nugget of knowledge that changed everything. You can have one channel that you send all your information to. The feeling of satisfaction as I deleted all of those channels was amazing. So now that I had refactored my code and it was in a place that I was pretty happy with, I wanted to make it into an actual app, a usable web application that I could tell all my friends to use on a local host. Bailey and various YouTubers were my gurus here. I looked at blogs, inspected web pages that I admired, and read all the documentation I could find on the net HTTP package before diving into development. Once I finally got it working and showing up on localhost 8080, I asked my Go guru, Bailey, if she would look at it. She asked that I put it on GitHub, and this opened a whole new challenge, as I'd never used GitHub before. I learned about Git, branches, a few developer best practices, and created my first PR. Long story short, I created the PR, received my first review, first issue report, made the process of making those changes, and created a new PR, got an approval, and merged. So I had my program's basic client-server relationship sorted, but now I needed a front end. And as the Go community had already given me so many wonderful Go gurus, naturally, I turned back to the community for my next. I attended a Go New York City meetup where Anthony Stark was giving a lightning talk on the SVG package. Afterwards, he kindly got a coffee with me, and that was where he demystified the relationship between front and back-end languages. He talked me through how to integrate your Go program with a HTML, CSS front end, as well as giving me more information on the SVG package. This got me really excited about diving into two new languages, HTML and CSS. Now, learning HTML and CSS was slightly easier than diving into Go originally, not because they're more simple or easier to learn, but because by this point I had learned not to second guess myself, to just dive into learning. If I needed help, I could ask for it. There were people around me who were willing to help, and I had many HTML helpers and CSS supervisors. So I ended up writing a simple HTML CSS static file, as well as some inline HTML for this part, but I am very much looking forward to diving into the SVG package in future apps. And this is how it turned out. This was my first big milestone. I was so proud. I think everyone I had ever met saw this app. That's how proud I was of it. So as I moved along the road to become a Gopher, I also wanted to start giving back to both my team and the Go community. Within my team, I took on this task of deleting user data when we got GDPR requests, as well as attending the engineer working sessions and taking on small tickets. This is my first. It was only one line change, but I took the ticket, made the change, put the PR in, got a review from my team, and got an approval. And I've done quite a few of these small tickets since. I also began contributing to the Go community. I hosted my first Go New York City meetup in November 2019. I hosted a Women Who Go 2-day intro to Go workshop in February 2020. And I now help as part of our internal New York City, New York Times Golang group. I hope to host a lot more Go events once we can in the future. So now on to the big question. Was it worth it? Is it still worth me investing all this time and energy to become a Gopher? The journey thus far has been wonderful, filled with challenges to overcome, wonderful people, and helpful resources to turn to. However, it is and continues to be extremely challenging for a number of reasons. Firstly, because writing code or any software engineering is not my job. Therefore, I can't dedicate the amount of time that I feel I need to learn in the most effective way. And secondly, it's the crippling imposter syndrome I still feel. I have no computer science background. I stopped taking maths at 16. And I have this image in my mind of what a software engineer is that, frankly, I don't feel like I fit with. I've doubted myself and have literally cried multiple times when I've not been able to understand or do something. I came to this country from London with no real friends or family, no real community. I spent 10 months building up a community at Columbia Journalism School, only to have most people leave when they got jobs elsewhere. I then started a new job and started trying to build a community there. But it wasn't until I found the Go community that I truly felt like these could be my people. This was a community I wanted to invest my time in. Hence the tears when I felt like I didn't fit in or I couldn't get it. Because the thought of losing that feeling of belonging was absolutely terrifying. It is in these moments I have been most grateful for the Go gurus and the Go community I have around me. They encouraged me to carry on and gave me the next steps to progress when I felt like I was losing hope. So thank you to every single person I've mentioned, as well as those I haven't. You all know who you are. Now, I'm going to take a few moments for you veterans in the room, you possible Go gurus. I want to talk to you for a minute about how my Go gurus helped me. I want to give you some tips if you want to dive into the world of being a Go guru. Throughout my journey so far, I've spoken to a lot of colleagues and friends, brilliant developers, who expressed the desire to help others try to learn code, but they didn't know how, or they worried that they wouldn't be any good at teaching others, because many of the things that they wanted to teach to them are now habit. What I'd say to those of you watching who are willing to help newbies is firstly, thank you. And secondly, don't worry about not being any good at teaching or helping. Just by giving some of your time to let someone talk through a problem they're having, a concept that they're struggling to get their head around, or sitting with them while you help them troubleshoot an error or an issue they're encountering, you're making a huge difference. Some of the most beneficial conversations I've personally had with my Go gurus have not been me sitting while they spoke about concepts, writing notes. It's been me talking through a problem with them, asking my guru questions, and then having my guru lead me in the right direction. So, this is my first top tip for you Go gurus. Don't tell your newbie the answer. Guide them and help them come to the conclusion themselves. A simple example of this is something I myself did. When I came to my Go guru asking about this particular program, I couldn't understand why it wasn't working. Why wouldn't my program run? Now, my Go guru could have made his life far easier and just told me, you need to delete the string after the bracket. And I would have been happy, my program would have run, and I would have moved on with my life. However, I wouldn't have understood why it wasn't working. And inevitably, I would have had this issue again. So, my Go guru instead asked me to hover over the error and read it out loud, missing return at the end of function, and then asked me to read through line by line what my code was doing. This is a function called greetMe that takes a string, which I have chosen to call name, and returns a string, which will be the program saying hello to whatever name I give it. In this case, my name, Angelica. My Go guru then asked me what I meant by return, and what the program meant by return. This is where the learning came in. Through this conversation, I realized that my program wasn't returning anything. It was printing to the terminal. Therefore, that is why the second string wasn't needed. It would have been far easier and less time consuming for my guru to just tell me the answer, but that wouldn't have given me the opportunity to work it out myself and enable me feel like I truly understood what was going on. Also, this isn't for everyone, but I found it especially useful to talk through my program line by line. To this day, I found it an extremely useful tool when troubleshooting. On to the second top tip. If you're working with one mentee, or perhaps it's someone new to the language or a junior developer, whoever it is, assume they know nothing in your first conversation. Work out their knowledge from the absolute basics, explicitly stated. Say, I'm going to assume you know nothing and start from the absolute basics so that I can see where you're at and we can start from there. Do you know the difference between a front and back end language? Do you understand the basic relationship between a client and a server? This is a great way to start because it enables your mentee to feel empowered to tell you what they do know. And it also gives them a positive affirmation of their knowledge. It also mediates that fear that many newbies have of asking stupid questions because you're beginning to speak to them at a level that they can understand. In keeping with this, something that I really appreciated, even when I was talking to a Go guru for months on end, was that every time I encountered a problem, they would check in on the fundamentals with me first. For example, they would say, Angelica, this issue that you're encountering is to do with pointers. Do you feel like you still have a baseline understanding of how pointers work, or would you like us to go through pointers first before we dive into your specific problem? I really appreciated this. My third top tip for you Go Gurus is to keep your mentee moving forward, helping them continue in their learning and always giving them the next steps. Check in with them. This doesn't have to be regularly. It can be weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, every other Sunday. The important thing here is to set them clear times when they can come to you to talk about issues they've encountered. This is great for two reasons. Firstly, because it makes your mentee feel truly supported, like they always have someone to turn to. And secondly, it's a great incentive for your mentee because they don't want to come to you for your check-in and you ask what progress they've made since last you spoke and you say nothing. So the next level of this is setting your mentee tasks with deadlines, almost like homework. This is not going to be great for all mentees, but for mentees like me who love deadlines, this is going to be great. I could go on and on about all the brilliant things that my Go Gurus have done for me, but the main thing is just to be there for your mentee, whether it be a sounding board for their ideas, someone to turn to for guidance, or someone they can vent to about their frustrations when they don't understand something. I've cried more times than I'd like to admit to my Go Gurus when I haven't understood something. And it was those Go Gurus that gave me the motivation to continue and let me know it was okay that I was frustrated. It just meant that I cared. Some great resources that my Go Gurus pointed me towards were Go Playground, Go Wiki, Go Tours, Gopher Sizes, as well as attending Go conferences together and watching Go conference recordings together and going through the content. Not only have I met some wonderful aspiring Go Gurus wanting to help people learn, I've also met a lot of people wanting to help build a more diverse and welcoming community of Gophers. And to them, I've given one top tip, and that is to talk as much as you can about what the Go community has given to you. Whether it be at work, at meetups, at parties, at family gatherings, wherever it is, just use your voice and tell people how wonderful the Go community is. literally say anyone is welcome of all levels, experiences. It's a community that will support you no matter where you are in your career or your life. That's what I've been doing. And slowly but surely, I brought some brilliant women, minorities, and members of underrepresented groups into this community, many of which I'm so excited to say are watching today, just by being honest about what the Go community has given to me. This goes hand in hand, not just with changing the stereotypical perception of what Gophers are, but of what software engineers in general are. Whenever asking around about other development communities, I really, really value people who will direct me to people who are friendly, helpful, but also are a representation of a diverse community. I'd like the Go community to be like that too. So whenever anyone asks about Go, I always make sure to direct them to someone who has that same vision of diversity that I have. Now, I know that was a lot. So for all you potential Go gurus, here are your 3 takeaways. 1, offer to help whenever possible in whatever way the individual needs. A study buddy, someone to bounce ideas off of, someone to review a PR, whatever they need. 2, don't just tell your newbie the answer, guide them and help them come to that conclusion themselves. And 3, use your voice. Just by stating out loud, the Go community is open to anyone, we welcome anyone. You can make a huge impact in the way people perceive our community. And if you say it enough, then maybe we can make it a reality. I haven't forgotten about you Go newbies. So for all you aspiring Gophers and Go newbies, here are your 3 takeaways. 1, truly anyone can be a Gopher. It doesn't matter your background or how technical you think you are. If you have that rush of excitement, that fire in your belly thinking about learning Go and trying it out, you can do it. 2, it's not going to be easy. There will be many challenges, but it will absolutely be worth it in the end. And 3, don't be afraid to ask for help from everyone and anyone. You have so many people around you who will be willing to sit down and help you along the way. Any of the GopherCon speakers this year? My first Go conference was Gotham Go in 2019. I saw Johnny speak, emailed him right afterwards, and he got a virtual coffee with me the next week. Our first conversation began with me asking him, what's a variable and how do I print it to the terminal? In fact, could you please explain to me what a terminal is? Our most recent conversation was chatting through this GopherCon speech. So I hope you've all found this whistle-stop tour at least moderately entertaining. And if you take only 3 things away from the entire talk, let them be these. 1, anyone, no matter what background, can be a Gopher. 2, I hope you've seen how amazingly important and helpful my Go gurus were along the way to keep me motivated, to help me not give up, and to give me that confidence to push forward. And 3, for all you non-newbies, you truly can change someone's life by helping them along their Go journey and being a Go guru just by being willing to help. Thank you. Oh, and side note, I am currently looking for a new Go guru, so if you're interested, let me know.
Awesome, Angelica. As again, I'll tell you, that was amazing talk. Thank you so much for sharing it and for giving it. You know, your story is amazing, so thank you.